Well, Robbie Ray had a pretty good day as the Diamondbacks fell back below 500 on Thursday, but could we see Corbin Carroll this weekend against the Royals? We're discussing that and a whole lot more on today's edition of Snakes Territory. Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, Robbie Ray was awfully good last night.
Good morning, Jesse. Yes, he was. It was really quite the performance from the former Diamondback. He really had them handcuffed through almost the entire game, other than, a couple of solo home runs. It was very impressive the way he pitched, and it was very distressing for the Diamondbacks and their fans to see the team fall back under 500.
Obviously, Robbie Ray, former Diamondback, someone that people around here are very familiar with. This was the second complete game of Robbie Ray's career, the last one being in May. I believe it was on May 30th of 2017 against the Pittsburgh Pirates, back when Robbie was a member of the Diamondbacks. Watching that game, though, Jack, it just made me realize, and obviously we've known about this, but seeing it firsthand really made it hit home for me that Robbie Ray is just such a different pitcher than he was when he first came up with the Diamondbacks. I mean, how many outings did Robbie have where he looked dominant at times, and yet he would only be able to go 5 innings or so because his pitch count was, at 105 by the 5th inning, and he was striking out a whole lot of guys, but he was very dependent on strikeouts, and that is not the pitcher that we saw at all in that game on Thursday, who needed only 102 pitches to throw a complete game.
Ketel Marte, speaking after the game, acknowledged exactly what you're talking about. He was asked, what's the difference you see in Robbie Ray compared to when you first started playing behind him in 2017? I mean, they were teammates for 3.5 seasons. And he said, yeah, he's a completely different pitcher. He's not afraid to come into the zone and, just throw strikes. He also said that slider is about as good as he's ever seen from Robbie Ray. So few people are probably better capable of comparing and contrasting what Robbie Ray looks like today versus what it was in 2017. And he was extremely impressed, even though he hit a home run off him in the 9th inning.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks, they tried, Jack. They really tried to avoid this complete game. Robbie had only 78 pitches going into the 9th, if you can believe that. But they made him work for it. Ketel hit that home run, as you said. Geraldo Perdomo, in typical Geraldo Perdomo fashion, drew an 8-pitch walk. And at that point, it was like, all right, he's at 94 pitches. There's only 1 out in the inning. The Giants got their bullpen up shortly thereafter, and it felt like the Diamondbacks might have a shot to at least salvage some dignity for themselves. But Robbie was ultimately able to finish the deal. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. did not help matters by flying out on the first pitch he saw right after that Perdomo walk.
A nice little anecdote about the Perdomo walk. Torey Lovullo was seen speaking with Geraldo for quite some time, fairly extended period at the end of the game on the dugout, at the top of the dugout steps. And so we asked Torey after the game, what was that all about? And he said that he really wanted to acknowledge and tell Geraldo, what a great at bat that was and how proud he was of him for, working such a difficult at bat to draw that walk and how important that was and everything it meant to him. Even though it didn't work out, he wanted to acknowledge in the moment just what that meant.
Perdomo doing Perdomo things. We saw a lot of that version of him throughout this series. But yes, Jack, in typical 2025 Diamondbacks fashion, they gave people maybe a little bit of hope. Things were looking up after the first 2 games of this series. Diamondbacks were back over 500. And then, of course, what we've seen the last 2 nights, Diamondbacks lose both games. They ultimately settle with a series split against the San Francisco Giants. The Diamondbacks are now back under 500 at 43-44. And it's unfortunate, Jack. This was an opportunity, as we discussed going into it, for the Diamondbacks to gain some ground on a really important divisional opponent, really important fellow wild card contender, and ultimately it's just a series split. It's not a disastrous outcome by any means, but it also is not what you're looking for if you're a fan of this baseball team.
It's not going to get them where they want to go. That's for sure. I mean, that's where we're headed is, a team that just can't seem to get on a run. There's still time to get on a run. They're not that far out of it, but it's looking just very difficult for this team to put it together in a consistent way. When I wrote my series takeaways late last night, and we published that this morning, the first takeaway was consistently inconsistent. Just hopscotching back and forth between over and under 500 and looking like world beaters for a game or two or three, and then, looking like a team that you might even have a hard time imagining them finishing 500 for a game or two or three. And that's pretty much what we saw in this series as well.
Well, the Diamondbacks ultimately, yes, they settle for a series split. Looking at some takeaways from the series, I guess we can also talk about the Diamondbacks side of the starting pitching in that Thursday game. Brandon Pfaadt, Jack, we saw him take what appeared to be a step forward his last time out. This game was not great for him. He was able to finish 6 innings. To his credit, he hung in there and was able to save the bullpen to an extent, which certainly has value. But he also gave up 4 runs. The Giants jumped on him right out of the gate. He issued a couple of walks in the first inning. Heliot Ramos got him with a 2-run double. Giants took an early 2-0 lead for the second consecutive game. And he did seem to settle in, Jack. I think as the game progressed, he started to look better. But, at a certain point, you'd love to see Brandon Pfaadt just put it together for an entire outing. And we haven't really seen that in quite some time.
It was an extremely aggressive approach by the Giants against Pfaadt. I think the number was 54 swings or 55 swings against him. That's a lot of swings.
Yeah.
And they obviously knew what they wanted to do. They wanted to attack. That when he did come in the zone, they felt like they could get to him, and they did so early on. But like you said, at least he managed to go 6 innings. That was kind of a silver lining. I asked him about that as well, and he said, "Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to get a quality start each time out. Kind of sucked that he, gave up the runs early." I would say also that it's important to note, as you have up there on the screen, the bullpen threw 11.1 innings. That means the starting pitching threw 25 plus innings, 25.2 innings. And the Diamondbacks, they have the 5th highest innings pitched per game of any team in Major League Baseball now. They're at 5.5 innings pitched per game. And so, a lot of fans may be thinking, well, you don't even go 6 innings a start, and what happened to 21 outs? But in the context of today's major leagues, the Diamondbacks push their starters longer and deeper than all but 4 teams in the majors.
It is strange how, you can have a subpar rotation that is still actually giving you a decent number of innings. We saw decent length as well from the Diamondbacks on Wednesday, as Merrill Kelly gave them 6 innings in a game that was certainly not his best outing, but it was a quality start. He gave the Diamondbacks a chance to win. And what Robbie Ray did is what Robbie Ray did on Thursday. Like, Robbie Ray is frankly a very good pitcher at this point, and that doesn't mean you expect him to throw a complete game against you, but he has the ability to do that sort of thing at this stage in his career. In my mind, Jack, the Thursday game just kind of is what it is. But I think the Diamondbacks really lost the series, or I guess they didn't lose the series, but they lost the opportunity to win the series on Wednesday. Where they really had a chance. Ketel Marte, of course, with the team down 5-3, hit a 2-run homer in the 9th inning. Diamondbacks tie it at 5. It goes to extras. And then, as we have seen so often over the last couple of years, the Diamondbacks were unable to score the ghost runner from second base. They did get him to third this time around, which is something we don't always see them do. But they were unable to get him home. And it was kind of an interesting sort of redemption story for Camilo Doval, as he's the one who gave up the 2-run homer in the 9th inning to Ketel, and then Bob Melvin sent him back out there for the 10th inning, and he was able to get his redemption. That's the game that I think really stings out of this series against San Francisco.
It's very strange how much they struggle in extra innings to score the ghost runner. I mean, they've played 10 extra inning games. They've scored, I think, 12 runs. They're 3-7 in those games. The Diamondbacks are actually one of the best high leverage offenses. Everyone talks about situational hitting. Well, situational hitting goes a lot deeper than batting average with runners in scoring position. But even there, they're league average. The league average is 252. The D-backs have hit 252. But they also, slug with runners in scoring position. They hit the most sacrifice flies of anybody. And in total, in both high leverage and medium leverage, the Diamondbacks are like a top 3 to 5 run scoring team in Major League Baseball in those situations. I mean, they score a lot of runs when the game's on the line, but for whatever reason, that's like comes to a screeching halt after the ninth inning, and I can't really explain it. It's very difficult to put my finger on why that happens. They're capable of much more. They frequently produce much more in situational high leverage, positions, and it's just not happening in extras. The other point, of course, with that game was Jake Woodford coming in, newly signed, and giving up a couple of runs and just not looking very good, not sharp at all. At one point, he had he was 40 plus pitches with as many balls as strikes. And eventually, gave up a couple of runs that, put the game a little bit further out of reach and made it more difficult. They could have, potentially won that game in the ninth inning off of Ketel's homer, had he just been able to do a little bit better job. So that was unfortunate as well.
The other moment that stands out came in the fifth inning when the Diamondbacks did score a couple of runs. They cut what was a 3-0 deficit and made it 3-2. However, it appeared they could have had another run in that inning. Diamondbacks third base coach Sean Larkin stopped Jose Herrera at third base on a Ketel Marte single with a couple of guys on. So Herrera was held up at third. Geraldo Perdomo appeared to be coasting into third base, but he had to go back to second once he saw that Herrera wasn't going to score. And fortunately, it didn't cost the Diamondbacks any outs, but it did potentially cost the Diamondbacks a run. Josh Naylor hit a sacrifice fly later in the inning, and if you kind of play it out with Perdomo getting to third, that sac fly would have tied the game instead of just pulling the Diamondbacks to within a run. And that's another scenario where, if that changes and the D-backs get another run there, then maybe that Ketel Marte 2-run homer in the ninth is actually a walk-off homer instead of just sending the game to extra innings.
Yeah, Torey Lovullo defended Larkin on that call. He said, look, bases loaded, nobody out. You want to be conservative there. You don't want to be giving away outs. It's the catcher running. Jose Herrera is very slow. All Larkin had to do was get Herrera thrown out at home, and the outrage would have been even greater.
That would be a much more egregious mistake, comparatively speaking. 100%.
That word egregious. I'm tired of it. It's so misused.
That's fair. A much more unfortunate mistake if that had been the case. So yeah, I mean that it is a hindsight is 2020 thing to an extent, but as someone who was at this game sitting up in the press box, it did appear that Jose Herrera, I think, probably would have scored from third base pretty manageably. I mean, I think he maybe would have drawn a throw, but hard to say without seeing the moment actually play out.
I will add that, that ball, that was hit from Jose's angle. It wasn't crystal clear that it wasn't going to be caught. And so there was a slight hesitation from him getting off second base, right?
Sure.
He had his secondary lead, took a step, and he clearly hesitated because, from our angle in the press box, it was fairly clear that the ball was going to get by, but it wasn't by a lot. Didn't get past the shortstop by a ton. And
right.
From Jose's angle, looking that way, it wasn't crystal clear. So it's not like he got a great jump and was barreling around third and Larkin threw up the sign. Jose was already slowing down before, well before he got to third base because he never got much of a head of steam going in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point. Certainly easy to look at a moment like that in retrospect and wonder what could have been. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, the Diamondbacks need to be better in extra innings. As you said, they're just 3-7 in that situation this year. And of course, the Jake Woodford decision was a little bit controversial there. We'll talk about that roster move later in the show, try to give you guys some insight on at least why the Diamondbacks, what their explanation was for sending Juan Murillo down and bringing Woodford in from outside the organization. We have a couple more takeaways from this Giants series. We're going to talk about Corbin Carroll, some injury news there that appears to be pretty promising, get into some other stuff as well. This is Snakes territory.
Building a hair growth routine is easy, only if you go with Nutrafol. Why is that, Todd Father?
Nutrafol, you think about hair. For me, sometimes the hair gets thinning. This thing will thicken your hair up as much as you need. You think about going to weddings, you're going to the beach, you're just hanging out with friends, and you want to take photos. You want your hair to look good, and this is the best possibility for it.
Yeah, and thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth, that's not it, okay? They have multiple formulas for men and for women that are tailored to fit different stages of life, okay? So go check out Nutrafol. Building a hair growth routine can be easy, and you order online. There's no prescription needed as well. Free shipping, automated deliveries, and for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering the FT fam $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code FOUL, F-O-U-L. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FOUL.
Well, I mentioned that Josh Naylor did hit a sacrifice fly in that game on Wednesday. That was, of course, Naylor's long-awaited return to the Diamondbacks lineup with that shoulder, neck area discomfort that he's been dealing with here for a while. Jack, that was good to see, and sounds like Naylor should be hopefully good to go from this point forward.
It seems that way. I mean, there was no report of any issues after getting into that game. Torey just said that they wanted to give him one more day off. And of course, you were facing the lefty Robbie Ray anyway. So it looks like, he should be back in the lineup. They are facing another lefty tonight. So we'll see how the lineup shakes out, but I expect him back in there.
The other storyline recently that I think is at least worth mentioning is that Tim Tawa has struggled lately at the plate. You can see on the screen here he's 0 for his last 23 at this point with 9 strikeouts. We saw Torey Lovullo use him as a pinch hitter pretty aggressively. Also in that Wednesday game in the 5th inning, right after that base running moment that we were just talking about with the Ketel Marte single, Tim Tawa came off the bench and hit with the bases loaded and nobody out. And unfortunately, he struck out in that spot. And frankly, Jack has just looked a little bit out of sorts at the plate lately. Certainly understandable for a guy who's very, very early in his major league career. These things happen, but it's been unfortunate to see Tawa start off as well as he did and kind of take this step back here lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than a little bit. I mean, he's struggled for a while now. I mean, obviously, this 0 for 23 stretch is an extreme example of that. But he hasn't looked great at the plate, even going back further beyond that. They found a hole like they always do. In his case, it's the slider low and away. And he started trying to adjust his swing and, go with the pitch and hit the ball opposite field to adjust to what teams were doing to him. But that adjustment seems to have him now unable to hit the ball right down the middle. So I don't know what's going on there. It's a tough game. He's a great athlete, and we know he has power. He has the ability to get going again and hit the ball with authority. But his chances are going to start getting diminished. The defense at first base hasn't looked great lately. He's done pretty well everywhere else. I mean, but for whatever reason, he's just not quite making, there have been difficult plays. There's been quite a number of hot shots to his left, to his right, and he just hasn't quite been able to come up with the ball. A couple of them, it's really not fair to judge him on it, but every time you see a ball go by him, you kind of, oh, man, why can't he get that one? Christian Walker would have had it. I mean, we all have the same reactions. But I think that if they stick with him, he'll pull out of it, but there may be a limitation on how much more they're going to allow him to struggle like this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's such a difficult game, and we see this so often with so many guys. Certainly hate to see it for Tim Tawa in particular because he has so much positional versatility, and that has been really valuable to the Diamondbacks here lately, as we've seen him in there at third base. Of course, he got a bunch of time in center field when he first came up. It really is anywhere on the diamond at any time. He's been up for it in a pretty impressive way. Taking a look at the standings, where this leaves the Diamondbacks, they're 3.5 out of that third wild card spot. They've been helped, Jack, by the fact that the Padres, Giants, and Cardinals have all not played great baseball here lately. Cincinnati Reds have been all right. They're 1.5 games out of that third spot, just 2 games ahead of the Diamondbacks. But if there's a silver lining here for Arizona, it's that even after losing these last couple of games, they only lost half a game in the standings as a result of that.
It's worth mentioning, and you've kind of counseled me on this point before, the 535 win percentage of the third wild card at the moment works out to about 87 wins. A few weeks back, I was thinking that it might take 90 to get there. But as you point out, the chief wild card contenders are kind of slipping back. I still expect somebody to get hot. I still don't really have confidence that 87 would be enough to get in there, especially since of potential tiebreaker scenarios. So I still think the D-backs at least have to get to 88, 89 wins to have a really good shot at getting into the postseason. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it does look like there's a pretty good possibility that it won't quite take 90.
Yeah, I still stand by we have no idea.
Sure.
Last year at this time, I think the third wild card team was barely over 500, maybe. There was a time when we were all talking about the addition of the third wild card spot being a travesty for the game because, it was all right, we're going to just let a 82 win team in every year or something. And then suddenly the Mets, Padres, and Diamondbacks basically just didn't lose the rest of the season. And then, suddenly, the Diamondbacks are missing the playoffs with 89 wins. So it's a good point, though. At least over the last week or two, we have seen the threshold drop quite a bit. So even though I don't know what it tells us definitively about the future, it is still definitely worth noting, and it can't be bad news for the D-backs at this point.
Maybe we should look at which teams have the most games against the likely 6 or 7 sellers that there are.
Yeah, that's a pretty big factor in the whole equation for sure. I'm curious. Let's see. July 4th of last year, the Cardinals had the third wild card spot, 45 and 41. So actually pretty similar to where we are right now. They were, of course, 4 games over 500. Well, we do have some positive news to talk about here, Jack, and that is that Corbin Carroll appears to be fast tracking his way back from his wrist fracture. I know you were in the post-game presser with Torey Lovullo yesterday, so you have more information on this than I do. But apparently, Jack, Corbin Carroll just sort of decided that he was going to play in a complex league game yesterday, and the Diamondbacks were like, sure, go for it, and he did.
Yeah, it's been a very strange week. It started off with Torey saying, hey, Corbin Carroll is going to be able to take some swings. And then we asked him to clarify, swings, what swings? So off a tee, flips, a traject machine. What was it? He said, no, dry swings. He's going to take dry swings. In other words, no impact with the baseball. And of course, that's not what happened. He he started hitting the baseball right away, and then he took batting practice, and then he hit balls off the traject. And yesterday, before the game, Torey tells us that, now Corbin Carroll is going to take live batting practice on Friday against Kendall Graveman. And, great. Okay, so he's moving along pretty quickly. And then an hour and a half later, the roster move shows up. And turns out that he's been sent to the ACL to play in a rehab game. So what happened, Torey? And he said, well, right after he was apologetic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mislead you guys. What happened is after he spoke with us, he went and saw Carroll in the cage, ripping the baseball, hitting the ball off the traject, ripping the baseball. And then he made some comments and then went over and said, hey, If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to go play in the ACL tonight. And they're like, okay, sure, go for it. They keep saying it's a pain tolerance thing.
Right.
There's probably a lot of question about this, and I just kind of want to take another moment. The chip fracture that they're talking about, they're not waiting for that chipped piece to fuse with another piece of bone. That's not what they're waiting to happen. That little chip is actually supposedly embedded in tissue. But the piece that's left exposed needs to heal and I guess just smooth out. And you can't really do any more damage to it. So that's why it's just a pain. That's why they keep saying it's just a pain tolerance thing. So that's a really interesting explanation because, in our ways of thinking, you're waiting for bone to heal and fuse. And how could that possibly be so quickly? Anyone that kind of pays any attention to this knows that bone healing takes 4 to 6 weeks, but they're not waiting for two pieces of bone to come back together. Now, the read on this from my vantage point is clearly Corbin Carroll is acutely aware of the situation that the team is in and the potential for a sell-off to happen. Yeah. And he has a sense of urgency that I got to get back there right now and try to help this team win. So the questions then became, well, could he come back this weekend? Could he play against the Royals? And Torey didn't even rule that out. He just basically said, look, I don't know. It really is up to the medical staff to put a date on it. I don't know what that date is. He hadn't had a chance to talk to him. Of course, he just got reports from the game. So we'll see. But if I were a betting man, I would probably count on Corbin Carroll maybe being back by the San Diego series, the way things are rolling.
Wow. So that would be Monday where the Diamondbacks start that series against the Padres. So that would be pretty remarkable, Jack. I mean, initially it didn't sound. I mean, we were basically hearing no timetable for a little while there. Obviously, as he's increased baseball activities, it's felt like something like this was coming into at least becoming more possible. But I certainly did not expect to see Corbin Carroll back this early in July. In my mind, as of a few days ago, you would have just been happy to see him before the All-Star break. And I think inevitably, maybe some Diamondbacks fans are, having PTSD with some of these injury situations and how they've worked out and being like, are we bringing back Corbin Carroll too early? I think that's the inevitable thing that runs through people's heads. But the way that you're explaining this, the way the Diamondbacks have explained it, if it is just a pain tolerance thing and there isn't any way that he can re-aggravate this by getting back in there, then I guess it seems like it should be totally fine. And you certainly respect Corbin wanting to be aggressive with this and wanting to get back in there to help his team as soon as he possibly can.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I totally understand anybody's, reticence here or even doubt about just how accurate the information that I just presented is. I question it as well. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. I mean, I don't really know what's happening there. I'm just relaying what we've been told to the best of my ability. But kudos to Corbin Carroll. I mean, he as somebody said on X, he's a dog. And he's trying to get out there. I mean, you see him walking through the clubhouse and, he doesn't really want to talk to anybody. Right now, he's just so determined to do his work and get ready to go.
Well, speaking of dogs, it is time for our Speaking of dogs, it is time for our DraftKings Player Spotlight, powered by DraftKings. And Geraldo Perdomo, Jack, is a player that we would like to highlight here because I know it was maybe felt quiet. He didn't hit any home runs in this Giants series or anything, but he did go 6 for 15 with 3 walks. He reached base 9 times over the course of those 4 games against the Giants. You mentioned the fact that he drew that very impressive walk against Robbie Ray in the 9th inning and how the Diamondbacks were very impressed with that. I know for a while there, Perdomo went through a rough patch. His numbers have taken a dip down here the last month or so, but you're starting to see Perdomo become the sort of pest that he is offensively once again, just seeing a lot of pitches and finding his way on base pretty often.
Yeah, he got on 5 times in Game 3 of the series, so
Yeah.
that was very impressive. He's clearly back to being the type of hitter that we've known. For a little while there, it seemed like he was losing some of his patience, but he's back in that mode for sure.
He's also trending toward a potential career high in stolen bases. He's at 13 already. As we're about halfway through the season. His previous career high was 16 stolen bases back in 2023, which is also impressive, Jack, because you might think that Geraldo Perdomo is fast, but you look at the sprint speed numbers, and his sprint speed is basically right around league average. It's actually not all that impressive at all. And the fact that he manages to steal all these bases, his sprint speed is 43rd percentile. The fact that he manages to steal bases and steal them pretty efficiently, he's only been caught twice this season. It's just another element of his game.
Absolutely. The cool thing with Geraldo Perdomo is for years he's a heady ball player, he's a smart ball player, but it's actually translating into tangible stats and performance numbers that everyone can see very well in his batting line, career high in homers, RBIs, stolen bases. I mean, he's on his way to that. So kudos to him.
Well, if you have never bet on baseball before, it is very easy with our friends over at DraftKings. You can pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Notes, spreadsheets, just vibes and dingers. It's all over there for you at DraftKings. And of course, new DraftKings customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. So you, of course, have to love that offer as well. And Jack, I believe you have a thought here maybe that people could take advantage of about what's going to happen this weekend against the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, I believe that it's going to be a very tough series for the Diamondbacks to win. They start off with Kris Bubic going against them. Their record against left-hand starters is 11-12. That's actually improved a little bit lately, although they went back under 500 against Robbie Ray. Bubic has, of course, had a very good season. He had a little bit of a rough patch, but in his most recent outing, he only gave up 2 runs against the Dodgers. I think this is just the kind of pitcher that's going to give the Diamondbacks fits in the first game. And then right now, the Diamondbacks do not have their Sunday starter is TBA. We don't know who the starter is going to be. Torey Lovullo indicated that Eduardo Rodriguez and Ryan Nelson would stay on turn, but they're going to likely, possibly push Zach Gallen out. It's indeterminate at this time, but that's what he indicated they might do. And if that's the case, I mean, the in-house options to start are Anthony DeSclafani, who has his last outing threw only 25 pitches, has not thrown more than 45 in a game. So, how many could they push him to go? Jake Woodford threw 53 pitches on Wednesday. So, I mean, how much can they use him on 3 days rest on Sunday? So whoever is pitching on Sunday is not going to be in a position to go very deep in the game. If they want to make a roster move, they could go to Bryce Jarvis. But, he's not pitching particularly well in AAA Reno. And, he's been throwing like 75, 80 pitches stretched out. So any way you slice it, it's going to be a very bullpen heavy game on Sunday if the Diamondbacks do decide to push Zach Gallen out. So all of these pieces put together just make this a tough series for the Diamondbacks to actually win. It doesn't line up well for them pitching-wise. So I kind of like the Royals to win the series at plus 115.
Well, if the Diamondbacks are making you sad, maybe you can at least take advantage of that over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Royals odds to win the series, that's at plus 115 over on DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, Jack, you alluded to the pitching matchups in this upcoming series where the Diamondbacks have TBD listed on both Saturday and Sunday. As you said, it sounds like they're planning to push out a starter and perhaps insert someone, maybe a bullpen game of some sort. We don't know exactly what the Saturday and Sunday games are going to look like for them. But yeah, the Royals have Chris Bubich going on Friday, who has been very, very good for them this season. Michael Wacha on Saturday, who's also had a solid year. Michael Lorenzen, a little bit less so. He's pitching on Sunday. This is a Royals team, Jack, that has one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. And yet, offensively, there's quite a bit to be desired there. They enter the series with an 85 OPS plus as a team, so 15% below league average there. But you can see here there are a couple of very formidable hitters in this lineup as well. Bobby Witt Jr., of course, a name that people are probably familiar with. He has a 131 OPS plus this year. And then Michael Garcia, who's been very, very good for them this year as well, with a 133 OPS plus entering this set with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah. By the way, just circling back on the pitching matchups, I mean, the other possibility, of course, is that they go ahead and insert the extra starter on Saturday and push Nelson back and give him the extra day rest on Sunday. And then Zach Gallen goes against San Diego on Monday. That's the other possibility. Remember, Ryan Nelson has been on a pitch count, and at 88 pitches last time out, he exceeded his pitch count, which created a lot of upsetness when he was pulled from the game. But Torey Lovullo said that Ryan's probably going to be in that 80-85 range, on a pitch count limit for the next two outings. And he's clearly been dealing with some kind of soreness going on there. So, maybe they're just trying to be as preventative as they can with him. So, that insertion into the rotation could happen Saturday, could happen Sunday.
The Royals enter the series 41-47. Diamondbacks took 2 of 3 from Kansas City in a series last year. So we'll see what happens here. It's an opportunity for the Diamondbacks to, again, try to gain some ground in the NL wildcard situation before that big Padres series 4-gamer in San Diego coming up early next week. Before we get out of here, Jack, we did want to touch on something we alluded to earlier, a roster move the Diamondbacks made earlier in the week. Jake Woodford was signed to a major league deal, a guy who has some major league experience, but has not generally pitched all that well at the major league level. This year, he spent time in the minors for a couple of different organizations. The numbers there, not great, sort of used as a swingman type, some appearances out of the bullpen, some as a starter. And the corresponding move there, perhaps more surprising, is the Diamondbacks option Juan Murillo. This is not to say that Juan Murillo has pitched amazingly well for the Diamondbacks all year, but he had emerged as someone that it felt like Torey trusted in higher leverage situations. He throws 100 miles an hour, and even though the command can be a bit erratic at times, it didn't really feel like Juan Murillo deserved to be the odd man out, given the state of this bullpen right now.
Yeah, I questioned Torey on that. I followed up. I mean, he gave his initial explanation to it, and I kind of circled back to it, and I pressed him. I said, hey, can you fill in the blanks here and give us a little bit more? And to his credit, he did. He gave his best effort at an explanation of what the organization was thinking. They're the ones that signed Jake Woodford and brought him in and necessitated a roster move. So let's not forget that. Somebody had to go down. And you're limited by how many guys have options. In the case of Murillo, they feel like he hasn't been consistent enough. His last 2 outings, he was having difficulty finding the strike zone. And then when he finally came back in, he got hit. We look at, we look at the stuff. We look at the 4.01 ERA, and we're like, what's wrong with that? In this bullpen, that looks great. But keep in mind, he's given up 7 of 13 inherited runners. He's given up 14 runs, 11 of them earned, so he's given up 3 earned runs. And as I often like to say, the pitcher's job doesn't start when an error is made. It's still up to him to try to pick up his fielders and make something happen. So, you look at those factors as well, and 13 walks and 25 innings, and it is reasonable for the team to feel like he needs to work on some things. What Torey was saying was, on more of a scheduled outing situation in Reno, where maybe he's working every third day and throwing 25 pitches, he might be able to figure out a little bit more consistency with his delivery. And hopefully, Torey said he'll be back. And so when he comes back, hopefully the delivery is just, he's found a little bit more consistency there. I mean, look, the Dodgers had him for years. They had these issues with Murillo, and that's a pretty good organization at developing pitching. And they weren't able to get his delivery consistent and his, strike throwing consistent. The Diamondbacks have had him for just, half a year. So we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm sure he will be back. And at the same time, in justifying the Jake Woodford situation and putting him in for 2 innings the other day, Torey insisted that not only did he have a couple of relievers down, but he had other guys that were fatigued. He said, look, my bullpen's very fatigued. So people are probably looking at just how many pitches thrown per game and, the numbers that we can see on the Fangraphs chart and all of that. But they know who's tired and who's not, who's sore and who's not. We don't know. And he can't say it explicitly before the games because that's competitive advantage. So after the game, he's saying, look, people were tired. I had to go with him. Had the biggest question, I'm sorry, I'm going on a long time here, but the biggest question was positive versus negative roles. And, meaning, in other words, when you're ahead or you're behind. And a lot of people feel like, hey, if you're only down by 1 run, why throw up the white flag and put this guy out there for 2 innings just to give up runs and allow the Giants to expand the lead? And Torey was asked about that. Like, are all negative roles the same? What's the difference between being down by 1 for you as opposed to being down by 2 or 3? And Torey said, generally, if he has a fully gassed bullpen and everybody's raring to go, he'll be more aggressive in using his positive role pitchers, even in a slightly negative role. But in this instance, he felt like he wasn't fully gassed up. Ironically, down 6-1, he used some of his positive role pitchers last night because his negative role pitchers were all used up already. So, that's the way it goes sometimes. I understand a lot of people not being able to accept that explanation. I'm not here to argue. Again, I'm just passing along the info.
Juan Murillo had a 0.96 ERA in the month of June. And I know that doesn't include, there's an unearned run in there. I'm sure there's some inherited runners in there as well. So I'm not saying that is an accurate representation of how good Juan Murillo really has been. But just keeping in perspective where this bullpen is at right now, Jack, is very hard for me to understand this decision. The one explanation that I think could make sense is some kind of a workload management thing. He worked 3 out of 4 days for, I guess it was 5 out of 7 days from June 24th to June 30th, which is pretty heavy usage for anyone. And I know that Murillo, and if you look at his minor league track record, he doesn't, he's not a guy who's been going 60, 70 innings every year. So I can understand that to an extent. And I think that sort of makes sense to me. But beyond that, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Jake Woodford has pitched only in the minors this year for the Yankees and Cubs organizations. AAA can be wonky at times, but he was in the International League. He wasn't in the Pacific Coast League. He had a 4.57 ERA with AAA Iowa in the Cubs system, a 4.54 ERA in the Yankees system there. You look at the peripheral numbers, they were not terrible, 59 strikeouts to 20 walks. So that's a decent ratio. But this is a guy who generally has struggled in the majors. He has a career ERA of close to 5. He has had some good stretches here and there for sure, but you have to go back a few years to really see that. So for the record, I will just say that, I certainly appreciate you sharing the Diamondbacks explanation, but this continues to not make a ton of sense to me why the Diamondbacks did this.
I cannot argue with you one iota there.
Well, we're on the I guess we're on the same page as far as that's concerned. Who knows? I mean, maybe this is just like through the All-Star break, maybe the Diamondbacks just want to get Juan Murillo a bit of a breather. Maybe they're just going to bring him right back after the All-Star break, and he'll have more opportunities and be a big part of this bullpen the rest of the way. Again, the workload management thing, to me, that does make sense to a certain extent. So maybe that's really what this came down to. Was there something you wanted to add on that?
Well, Torey alluded to that as well. I mean, that was a factor. I pressed him on that. I said, is this about workload and maybe allowing him to work in more of a structured environment so that he doesn't get overused and overworked? And Torey said, yeah, for sure. Said, here in the majors, I need him when I need him.
Right.
Whereas down there, they can schedule out when he works. So, I mean, that's a factor. The question is was Jake Woodford the best option that they could come up with if they did need to give him Murillo a blow?
Yeah. I mean, and granted, this time of year, you're not going to find like top-notch relievers just out there and available, right? I mean, they had an opportunity. Woodford opted out of his minor league deal. And so if they wanted to pick him up, I mean, this was the time that they had to do it. But, looking at his numbers in the minors, I think he's someone you'd be okay pitching in a game where you're ahead by a good amount, or where, you're behind by a good amount. You need some coverage there, sort of like what Anthony DeSclafani has done for this team. But, in a 3-2 game, that's not the situation you'd maybe drop for a guy that you just brought in from outside the organization.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about this decision for much longer, but we'll just go ahead and leave it right there. We appreciate all of you being with us here in this episode of Snakes Territory. As always, it helps us out a lot if you leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Of course, you can find us on social media as well. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye?
I just want to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July.
There you go. It is July 4th. Here we are. Hope everyone stays safe out there. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.